The roar of 156 engines fell silent, one by one, a ripple of quiet spreading through the dusty parking lot of the Harmony Creek Summer Fair. It was a sound that usually meant trouble, a prelude to a storm, but this time it was the sound of a storm brewing for someone else. When the men who snatched a little girl thought they'd vanished without a trace, they didn't know their reckless act had just crossed paths with a force that truly leaves no trace, only consequences. Jax, the leader of the Road Hounds MC, was a man carved from granite and leather. His face was a roadmap of hard living, but his eyes, behind the dark shades, held a surprising depth. He was leaning against his Harley, a chrome beast that shimmered under the afternoon sun, watching the last of his chapter park their bikes. They were at the edge of Harmony Creek, a small town that barely knew what a motorcycle club was, let alone 100 of them. They were just passing through, a pit stop on their annual charity ride. Jax, despite his formidable presence, had a soft spot. Just yesterday, he'd pulled over on a lonely stretch of highway to help an elderly woman with a flat tire, refusing even a thank you. He just grunted, "Keep moving, ma'am," and rode off, leaving her a bit stunned. He saw a lot of himself in the forgotten ones, the ones overlooked. The air hung heavy with the smell of popcorn and diesel, a strange mix for a quiet Sunday. The fair was winding down. Suddenly, a small figure darted from behind a cotton candy stand, weaving through the scattering crowd. It was a boy, no older than 7, his face smeared with tears and dirt, his blonde hair a wild mess. He stumbled towards Jax, his little chest heaving. Jax straightened up, his brow furrowing. The boy, Leo, stopped right in front of Jax, eyes wide with terror, scanning the imposing figures surrounding him. He looked like he was about to shatter. He pointed a trembling finger back towards the carnival. "Bad men," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper, ragged with fear. They took my sister, Lily, 20 minutes ago. She was right there, by the Ferris wheel. They just put her in a truck and drove away." His small body shook uncontrollably, his words tumbling out in a rush, desperate and barely coherent. Jax knelt down, his large frame suddenly gentle. "Hey, easy now, little man," he rumbled, his voice surprisingly soft. He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, feeling the boy's tremble. "Slow down. Tell me again, what did these men look like? What kind of truck?" He tried to keep his voice calm, but a knot was tightening in his gut. Around him, the other roadhounds started to gather, their faces hardening. Silence fell among them, a heavy, expectant silence. Leo buried his face in his hands, big, silent sobs racking his small body. He was too young, too scared. "I don't know," he wailed, his voice cracking. "Just big, and one had a snake tattoo, and the truck, it was rusty and loud." He was incoherent, lost in a blur of terror. Jax knelt down, his large frame suddenly gentle. "Hey, easy now, little man," he rumbled, his voice surprisingly soft. He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, feeling the boy's tremble. "Slow down. Tell me again, what did these men look like? What kind of truck?" He tried to keep his voice calm, but a knot was tightening in his gut. Around him, the other roadhounds started to gather, their faces hardening. Silence fell among them, a heavy, expectant silence. Leo buried his face in his hands, big, silent sobs racking his small body. He was too young, too scared. "I don't know," he wailed, his voice cracking. "Just big, and one had a snake tattoo, and the truck, it was rusty and loud." He was incoherent. Jax felt a surge of frustration. How could he get concrete details from a child in shock? One of the newer members, a young guy named Rook, pulled out his phone. "I'll call 911, Jax." He punched in the numbers, his voice low and urgent. A minute later, Rook hung up, his face tight. "They said they're sending a unit, but it might be a possible custody dispute and advised us not to interfere." His jaw clenched. A patrol car, lazily cruising the perimeter of the fairgrounds, slowed as it approached the gathering of bikers. Officer Miller, a man with a perpetually bored expression, peered out the window. He saw the distraught child, the imposing bikers, and a flicker of irritation crossed his face. He pulled over, his window rolling down with a whir. "All right, boys, what's the ruckus? You know the rules about loitering. And you," he looked at Jax, his eyes dismissive, "I told your kind to keep moving. This isn't the place for your activities. We'll handle whatever's going on with the boy." He waved a hand dismissively, clearly seeing a gang of troublemakers, not a group of men trying to help. The unspoken insult hung in the air. "You're not good enough. You're just trouble." Jax's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek.
He felt a cold burn spread through his chest, a mix of helpless anger and fierce protectiveness. He wanted to lash out, but the boy was still trembling beside him. Just then, Leo sniffled, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. His eyes, still red-rimmed, darted up. "The truck," he whispered again, a new spark of memory in his eyes. It had a crack, like a spider web on the front window, and a sticker, a rusty anchor, on the back bumper. He pointed a shaky finger towards the dirt track leading away from the fairgrounds. It went that way, into the woods. A hush fell over the bikers. Jax's head snapped up, his gaze following Leo's pointing finger. A rusty anchor, a spiderweb crack, specifics, real details. His eyes met Rook's, a silent message passing between them. This wasn't a custody dispute, this was real. "All right, boys," Jax said, his voice low, a gravelly rumble that cut through the lingering tension. "You heard the kid. Spiderweb crack, rusty anchor sticker, rusty truck." He points towards the woods. He swept his gaze across the faces of his chapter. "Rook, you and 6 others, head out in that direction. Stay off the main roads, check every dirt path, every abandoned shed. Look for any sign of a vehicle. No heroics, just intel. Call me. The rest of you, split up, fan out, quietly. No engines until you're clear of town. We're looking for a truck, rusty, with a unique sticker, heading into the woods. We don't want to spook them. And if you see anything suspicious, anything at all, you call me. Do not engage alone." The engines of the Road Hounds roared to life, a deep, guttural symphony that vibrated through the ground. But they didn't head out en masse. One by one, in small groups, they peeled off, disappearing into the side streets, becoming shadows in the fading afternoon light, their rumble fading into the hum of the town. Jax gently lifted Leo, settling the boy on his own bike, in front of him. "You ride with me, kid," he said, his voice firm but reassuring. "We're going to find your sister." He waited a few minutes, let the others disperse, then followed the path Leo had indicated, a silent prayer forming in his mind. They rode slowly, carefully, Jax's eyes sweeping the tree lines, the overgrown driveways. An hour passed, then another. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. Leo was quiet, clutching Jax's vest, occasionally pointing vaguely or whimpering. The dread in Jax's chest tightened with every passing minute. Was it too late? Had they gone too far?
Just as despair threatened to set in, his phone buzzed. It was Rook. "Jax, we found it. Old industrial park, about 5 miles east of town. Abandoned warehouse. Saw the truck, the anchor sticker, the cracked windshield. They've been here for a bit, boss. Looks like they're trying to board up a window, and there are 2 of them." Jax's blood ran cold. Boarding up a window, they were trying to hide. His voice was steady. "Don't move, don't go in. Just hold position. I'm coming. Tell the others to converge." He pulled a U-turn, his engine roaring to life. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, holding on tighter. The full force of the Road Hounds, having received Rook's message, was already converging on the abandoned industrial park, a silent, dark wave. The warehouse stood like a forgotten tomb, its brick walls crumbling, windows either shattered or boarded up. 2 men were indeed trying to nail a piece of plywood over a broken window on the side. One was burly, with a grimy tank top and a snake tattoo coiling up his arm, Leo's bad man. The other was thinner, nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder. The air thrummed with unspoken tension as the bikers, now a solid wall of leather and chrome, silently surrounded the building. Their engines had been cut a block away, leaving only the soft crunch of gravel under their heavy boots. Jax dismounted, setting Leo down gently. "Stay with Rook, little man," he instructed, his eyes never leaving the warehouse. "Don't move." He strode forward, his heavy boots echoing in the stillness. His gaze fixed on the snake-tattooed man, who had just hammered the last nail in. The man, hearing the crunch of gravel, turned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he saw the sea of grim faces advancing. His partner, Mitch, dropped the hammer, clattering to the ground. "What in the hell?" Snake stammered, his bravado quickly fading. "Who are you guys? Get lost. This ain't your business." Jack stopped a few feet from them, his voice a low growl that carried over the silent crowd. "We're here for a little girl, Lily. She's about 5 years old, blonde hair, wearing a pink dress. You took her from the fair about 2 hours ago." Snake's face went pale. He scoffed, trying to regain some composure. "A little girl? What are you talking about? We ain't seen no kid. You got the wrong place, buddy. We're just fixing up this old place for a friend." He gestured vaguely at the boarded-up warehouse. Mitch nodded vigorously, but his eyes darted nervously to the side.
Funny, Jack said, his voice dangerously calm, because a 7-year-old boy with tear tracks on his face, who describes your truck down to a rusty anchor sticker and a spiderweb crack on the windshield, just pointed us right here. And he also mentioned your charming snake tattoo. He took another slow step forward. So, you gonna tell me again you ain't seen no kid? Snake's eyes flickered to the tattoo, then back to Jack's, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. He tried to laugh, a hollow, desperate sound. Look, man, there's been a mistake. Maybe he saw another truck. We're just workers, honest workers. He gestured vaguely at the boarded-up warehouse. Mitch nodded vigorously, but his eyes darted nervously to the side. Funny, Jack said, his voice dangerously calm, because a 7-year-old boy with tear tracks on his face, who describes your truck down to a rusty anchor sticker and a spiderweb crack on the windshield, just pointed us right here. And he also mentioned your charming snake tattoo. He took another slow step forward. So, you gonna tell me again you ain't seen no kid? Snake's eyes flickered to the tattoo, then back to Jack's, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. He tried to laugh, a hollow, desperate sound. Look, man, there's been a mistake. Maybe he saw another truck. We're just workers, honest workers. He gestured vaguely at the boarded-up warehouse. Mitch nodded vigorously, but his eyes darted nervously to the side. Funny, Jack said, his voice dangerously calm, because a 7-year-old boy with tear tracks on his face, who describes your truck down to a rusty anchor sticker and a spiderweb crack on the windshield, just pointed us right here. And he also mentioned your charming snake tattoo. He took another slow step forward. So, you gonna tell me again you ain't seen no kid? Snake's eyes flickered to the tattoo, then back to Jack's, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. He tried to laugh, a hollow, desperate sound. Look, man, there's been a mistake. Maybe he saw another truck. We're just workers, honest workers. Honest workers don't board up windows in an abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere while a child is missing. Jax retorted, his voice steel. Jax heard a faint, desperate whimper. It was indistinct, but it was a child's. It was all the proof he needed.
"Lily!" he roared, his voice shaking the very air. "Lily, are you in there?" A small, terrified cry answered him. "Leo! Mommy!" Snake's face drained of all color. Mitch stumbled backward, his hand reaching for the door. "No, don't go in there!" Snake yelled, his voice cracking with panic. He made a desperate lunge towards Jax, a pathetic attempt to break through the wall of bikers. Rook and another biker, Hammer, moved instantly. Snake was tackled to the ground before he could even lay a finger on Jax, his face scraping against the rough concrete. He thrashed, cursing, but 2 burly bikers held him down, their knees pressing into his back, his arms twisted behind him. Mitch, seeing his partner taken down, tried to bolt for the woods, but a dozen figures converged on him, cutting off his escape. He cried out, a pathetic, high-pitched yelp, as he was quickly subdued. Jax, ignoring the struggling men, kicked open the rickety warehouse door. The smell of dust and damp concrete hit him, mixed with a faint, sweet smell of fear. In the dim light, huddled in a corner amongst some old crates, was a tiny figure, Lily. Her pink dress was smudged, her blonde hair tangled, and her blue eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. She looked up, saw Jax, and let out a strangled sob, extending her small arms. "Lily!" Jax breathed, his voice rough with emotion. He scooped her up, holding her close. Her small body trembled against his leather vest. "You're safe now, little one. You're safe." He carried her out into the sunlight, where Leo, having broken free from Rook, was already running towards them, his face a mixture of fear and overwhelming relief. "Leo!" Leo screamed, tears blurring his vision. He launched himself at his sister, wrapping his arms around her and Jax, a small, fragile knot of siblings finally reunited. Jax held them both tightly, his own eyes burning, a silent tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. Around them, the bikers watched, their grim faces softening, some openly wiping their eyes. The 2 kidnappers, now bound and gagged with strips of their own shirts, lay on the ground, whimpering. Jax pulled out his phone, his voice steady once more. "Officer Miller? Yeah, Jax, you might want to send your unit to the old industrial park. We found the girl, and her abductors. They're not going anywhere." He glanced at Snake, a silent, chilling promise in his eyes. He heard Miller's shocked voice on the other end, then hung up.
Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. The bikers, having done their job, began to silently mount their bikes, leaving the kidnappers for the authorities. Jax placed Lily gently back on the ground, watching as she clung to her brother, burying her face in his shoulder. He gave Leo a firm nod, a look of respect and gratitude passing between the gruff biker and the brave little boy. Then, he swung his leg over his own bike, the engine purring to life. The Road Hounds, their mission accomplished, started to ride away, a low rumble fading into the afternoon, leaving behind the wail of sirens, the cries of justice, and the silent, thankful tears of a reunited family. Stories like this remind us that courage can be found in the most unexpected places, and a community can be forged from the most unlikely bonds.
If this tale of swift justice touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more true stories that will make you believe in the good in the world. What do you think motivated these bikers to act so quickly and decisively? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and until next time, ride safe.